Hey, Gavin, I hear you got a story for us.
I do, Bob, and I'm not nervous at all. Thank you for asking. You know, as long as I don't take my glasses off, I'm... Oh! First of all, I want to acknowledge, I should acknowledge, Kirby, I want to acknowledge you, ladies and gentlemen. Kirby's still one of the best blues soul singers in this city. So,
all right, that's great.
I appreciate you showing up, thanks, man. Now I'm not nervous at all. Yes, I do have a story to tell. Wrestled effectively with the truths that history has laid before us, and therefore we dare not move into a future that requires our understanding of age-old and simple verity. Verity just meaning truth. Yeah, I will be using maybe a few less common words, but I will do my utmost to provide both definition and context as we go along. Is everybody with me? Anybody fall asleep yet? No? Everybody awake? Good. Then I will continue. I wish to provide a distinction. So the name of this speech that I'm going to give today, or this talk, lecture, or whatever you want to call it, is the prophecy of the eagle and the condor. And I will get more into it. But first I want to provide a distinction on the historical definition of the word prophecy. Prior to the Israelites co-opting the terminology and redefining the word prophecy as an esoteric, impracticable prediction of the future, the word itself simply meant poetic utterance. So, you know, I look at Kirby here. When he writes a song, it is poetic utterance that he's giving weight to, either the past, the present, or the future. And that is the actual definition of prophecy. So if you all keep that in mind as I go along, that will help you out immensely. There's far more to say on this subject, but of course I digress. Now, on to the story entitled The Prophecy of the Eagle and the Condor. Popular amongst many South American tribes and similar to those around the world, nearly every culture speaks poetically that in the late 1990s, we entered a period of remarkable transition. And so I want to talk about transition, that word, just for a second. It may take our imagination, and this is more of a thought experiment, but stick with me. I'm sure we can figure this out together. I do a lot of film editing these days. Inherent in the editing process is the necessity to, from time to time, use what are called transitions. The utility of a transition is to provide a bridge between one scene and the next. At the inception of the functional process of a transition, its effect is almost imperceptible to the eye. One must really be aware of the subtle changes created from this asset or transition in order to ascertain its mere existence. So it's very difficult to see the transition at the beginning of the transition. This has all weight to, I think, our reality and what we've been seeing and perhaps denying and also not denying in the last epoch of time. Whether in film, the political, the cultural, or the spiritual, those who are most educated or attuned to see these minute differences will most likely be the forebearers of exposing its existence. Of course, from a position of the common observer, they are hard-pressed to discern this reality, and therefore they would struggle to acknowledge the fact of its being. So a lot of people, if you're not attuned to what's going on, it's kind of like music. You know, I mean, Kirby and I can attest to this, and anybody in the band can, the great players. We typically will know what's going to happen musically before you do. And the reason for that is just not because we're playing, it's because we have taken years and a lifetime of study and practice using the mind, and of course the heart would be the thing that would lead us to love what we do. And then the mind captures that and studies what it means to comport music into reality, and along with that blessing that we bestowed upon ourselves in terms of education, we therefore can ascertain certain things that other people can't hear. And therefore we're able to give you, hopefully, a good experience of some musical thing that we do. At least we hope we do that. And everybody's pretty quiet right now, so.
Yes, they do.
Okay. If that's the case, y'all just come in, you know, you can applaud or whatever. Not for me, but for the fact that, you know,
Keep going.
yeah, there is that, I know, Bob, you know, we went through this 5 times, and he's like, just take that script. Just take the script.
Or you'll get the hook.
Not the hook. Okay, so if these observations are of a significantly profound nature, especially if they should aggravate or challenge any established cultural or spiritual norm, the less educated or spiritually ungrounded individual may succumb to fallacious arguments, denial, defamation, censure, or even violent reaction. And I think we've seen that. I will continue. As we continue through the transition process, it becomes most undeniable that something is amiss. So at this point, a lot of people can apprehend what's going on. You can start to see something, even if you're not seeing it, you can feel it. You can start to sense within you, the heart, right? It stirs, and you realize something's not quite right. The reality of a prior scene becomes blurred, almost indistinguishable from its former state. As we reach the middle of the transition, the complete picture is out of focus, ambiguous, dark, and gives no illusion or promise as to what, if anything, could materialize on the other side. If this is not the end of the plot or the finale of the storyline, then, as before, still nebulous and without perfect form, one begins the adjustment of sight to another reality emerging. So now we're on the other side of the transition. And I would like to say transition more than transformation. I think transformation is a more personal thing that we partake in, the transformation of our lives and, you know, becoming, dare I say, woke, more awakened to the reality around us. So I'll keep going. Whence at once, and as if nothing substantial had ever occurred, a new vibrant reality has now been made visible. The reticence, or being reserved, the reticence for having to confront uncomfortable truths in the face of undeniable global turbulence typifies our current society's ideology and is altogether the human proclivity of fear, denial, and bargaining. It is a stage of grief, and one that we, if we believe to possess an analysis that is steeped in reality, peer-reviewed and vetted by evidence, then all empathy, compassion, and forbearance should be granted to those bereft of this same knowledge. So we should love people. It's pretty simple, isn't it? I mean, we say it, but we should really do it. And part of that is striving with people. If you notice a lot these days, people don't strive together anymore. You know? They're easily, what's the word, triggered, which is a word I didn't grow up with. Triggered, I mean, yeah, you know, you're going to upset me, but that's part of the human experience. So I will keep going. Love, right? Beauty. I mean, if we're talking about beauty, what is beauty? Love. I don't think there's anything more beautiful than that. I continue. These three virtues are the beauty of the Creator and should be the work and joy of any church, any community, and of humanity itself. So if we really truly believe these things, we should have agency towards them, meaning that we should not just think about doing it, and we should not profess that we do it. We should do it. We should really love and really care. And of course, love takes different forms. There's tough love and everything else. Yes, Bob, I'm going.
I interrupt to point out that is principle 5. I act upon the spiritual. It's not enough to know these things, but we act upon it.
Well, you know, and the acting of it, that can sound very, you know, especially from a dogmatic standpoint, that can sound very have to do. And nobody has to do anything. It's just in your best interest and the best interest of others that you love. And trust me, we're seeing a lot of actions these days that are not in the best interest of each other and humanity. So, yes, Bob, I'm back on the script. From the monasteries, so here's the story. I haven't even gotten to the story yet. Are you all still with me?
No.
Annie about to fall asleep. Do I need to get up and dance? You know, whirling dervish or something? Or are we all okay? You okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, you haven't said much. But I know he's good.
Gavin,
Yes, ma'am.
instead of reading the story, why don't you just tell it to us?
Well, because it's complex, and yet not.
So
And
give us what's not.
okay, well, sure. Let me do both. Let me try and do a little bit of both.
Gavin,
Yes, ma'am.
can you slow down a little bit?
Absolutely. Am I going too fast? That's probably just my nervousness.
No.
You know what I mean? Not like I'm freaking out right now.
Just take a deep breath, man. Just take a deep breath.
Deep breath. From the monasteries in the Himalayas, ceremonial sites in Indonesia, and indigenous reservations in North America, from the depths of the Amazon to the peaks of the Andes, and into the ancient Mayan cities of Central America, I have heard, meaning the author here, that ours is a special moment in human history, and that each of us was born at this time because we have a mission to accomplish. Now, we've heard that before in history. We've said it a lot. I've heard it a lot in churches, I've heard it a lot in communities, but I tend to really believe it these days. And I think one of the reasons for that is because we face existential considerations that we have never necessarily considered before. You know, the bleakness of that, or the truth of that, the honesty of that being either nuclear or global warming or things of this nature. So I want to stop here just for a second because it's quite a statement to make. And it's not an easy one to make in front of a bunch of people staring me down at the moment. But I do want to ask a simple question, and that is, what do you, and I'm going to pick you out, especially the ones not looking at me, what do you make of the notion that we have been born into a particular moment in history? So I want to ask somebody. Go ahead, sir. What does that mean to you?
First of all, what do you mean by born? And second of all, I always believe that the spiritual world is what is primary. So I guess I kind of look at this world as being very temporary, very casual, you know, non-essential, etc., etc. Because my essential life is my spiritual life. So that's kind of below the horizon as far as when I look at it.
Right. Dude, that's great.
If you want to look below the horizon, that's fine. We can do that. But are we wasting our time when we're doing that? Because we're already spiritual creatures. We've already been elevated. So why do we need to demonstrate all over again that we do have a purpose, that we do have a function, etc. For, of course, to satisfy some questions in our mind and other people's minds, and in humanity, of course, it's all useful and beneficial, but it's sort of non-essential. It's just non-essential.
No, okay.
Leave it at that.
Fantastic. I never should have asked the question. Because here we go. You know, brother, I totally agree with you. But could you agree with me that although you have been granted from whence it comes, you know, we could assume many things, but you have this understanding, right?
Right, my what?
Would you agree, or could you agree, that there are many people who don't? That they have the opportunity to,
Right.
but they're not taking the opportunity for a myriad of reasons.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
again, it's incidental.
Incidental.
So I don't want to focus on it too much.
Yeah, it's incidental that
There's
people.
people all over the scale, right?
Yeah.
All over the scale in this world. Some left, right, some in the center.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about, you know, the spiritual level,
Right.
spiritual life. So they're all over
Paul,
the
could
scale.
I just interrupt for a second? We're not going to have time to go into this. We
Right.
could be talking about this
Okay,
for quite a
sure.
while. So,
Just-
but
this
I
is-
do appreciate your comments.
Like your
Paul.
point is very valid, and maybe after this, you know, you and I can get together because, you know, I agree with you primarily. I just take a look at the greater humanity. Once I'm okay, then I start to branch out, and when I see that, I see some conflict. either personal or otherwise. So, cool. I never should have asked. No, brother, that's great, man. That's great. The titles and words of these prophecies differ slightly. They tell variously of a new age of the third millennium, the age of Aquarius, the beginning of the fifth sun, or the end of the old calendars, and the commencement of new ones. Despite the varying terminologies, sorry, I gotta slow down. Despite the varying terminologies, however, they have a great deal in common, and the prophecy of the condor and the eagle is typical.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I see we've only got about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Okay.
So I'd like to jump in and share that the end of the prophecy,
Okay.
and then maybe make a few comments in that. Is that all right?
Sure.
All right.
Well, basically the prophecy.
So,
I mean, 25 minutes goes quick, doesn't it?
20 minutes.
20 minutes goes in quicker than 25.
Wow. So the prophecy, the poetic utterance that so many cultures have spoken about is this story about the eagle and the condor. And the eagle represents the mind, the intellect, logic and reason, and the condor represents the heart, intuition, the emotions, the inner voice. And in the many millennia ago, and especially around 1400, 1490, what happened was the eagle, the mind, and the condor split. And the world split with it. And so there's cultures that really are very spiritually based and speak from the heart, and there are cultures that are like, especially most of the Western cultures, are very much about the intellect, about the mind, and they started to compete with each other. And the prophecy tells that it almost brings the condor to extinction for 500 years. And in the 1990s, a shift, a transition occurred and is still occurring today, where the eagle and the condor, rather than fighting with each other, you can think about science and religion, and how science has tried to suppress religion, and for many centuries religion tried to repress science if it didn't go along with what they were telling the world. And now they're coming together. The heart and the mind are coming together, finally. And the eagle and the condor will fly in the skies together along the same path. And can you not relate to that? Does that not make sense? I know in my own life, I closed my heart at a very early age and went into my head. I was very sensitive as a child. And so I cried a lot. And as a little boy in the 60s, my dad was not impressed. He didn't like that at all, and I suffered. And so I just decided, and I don't even remember when or why, but I just decided one day that I wasn't going to feel anymore because it was too much. So I went into my head, logic and reason, and I spent the next 35, 40 years there. And it wasn't until my heart didn't start waking up till close to 50, where I really started to focus on opening my heart. But I needed my mind to understand in order for me to allow myself to open my heart. And that's this, the heart and the mind, Gavin is really, he's very passionate about this idea of we need to use our minds and talk and have discussions and work through these things that are happening in the world right now, this transition we're going through. And I was quite resistant. Because I'm in my heart now. I just want to feel bliss and life is good. Let's get out of our heads. And that's what I've been working on for years, to get out of my head and trust my intuition, that little inner voice inside. But because of his passion, something told me that this is important. I need to listen.
Can I interject just really quick?
Yeah.
Because that's what you and I talked about, was this triumvirate, or this trinity within our own selves, which is body, mind, and soul. And we all, of course, as Homo sapiens, have these three things working. And if we use those in tandem, I mean, God didn't give you a brain to discount it. He gave you a brain to use. He also gave you a heart to feel and to be led by, in some respects. He also gave you a body to have agency with and to be able to pick up something and feed yourself. We don't deny any of these things, and yet for some reason, sometimes we feel afraid of going to a place, especially mindfully, when it does have its agency depending on the situation. You wouldn't use your mind in a fight or flight experience. You would just flee, right? So you wouldn't be using that. You would be using all intuition in your heart to get out of there. But that doesn't mean that I think it does God a disservice to not put all of these three things together and use them as utilities where they are most necessary. And I guess that's what I want to speak on mostly today. I mean, Bob, talks about getting out of his head and into his heart, and we both have the same experience there. I mean, my dad didn't want me to use my head, my heart, or my body, and I'll save that story for another day. But, I've learned through time that these three things are of the utmost importance to us in a physical world in which we live. That does not discount the fact that time and space may not exist, and I'm more than okay with that. But it is I just see beauty in having mindful discussions and heart-filled discussions, and ones in which we are so passionate that we use our bodies to discourse. Yeah.
And this beauty of discussion, I would like to call it dialogue, not arguments. How do we step into that? How do we allow ourselves to have a discussion with someone who has opposing views to us? These are difficult conversations. And how can we keep our heart open with someone who's totally against what it is we're talking about? Wouldn't that be beautiful? If we were able to be together with someone and allow them to speak their truth, even if it goes against our own, without rejecting them and pushing them away.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge to each and every one of us, I think, to not hold contempt. It's a challenge to do that. And as difficult as the words may sound today, that's not a bad thing. If my words are not contentious, but if they tweak you a certain way, you may want to apprehend that. You may want to grab onto that and ask yourself, where does that come from? Why am I getting angry? Or, why do I disagree? All these things are okay. And trust me, the spiritual is a beautiful thing. But so is the mind, and so is the body. And the three of them together create the utmost beauty in every individual. And then, if you talk about change, man, you got change.
And we're coming to a close, and who believes we're in a transition right now? Almost every hand goes up. Yes, we are. So I would encourage all of you in this transition, because there's going to be people that are struggling, as Gavin said, that don't understand, that don't have a spiritual base, and they need our love. They need our support. In the Course in Miracles, they say that there's only two kinds of acts: acts of love and calls for love. So let's get together, have those difficult, uncomfortable conversations, only with an accepting, open heart. With as Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand. With an attitude of seeking to understand.
Thank you all. I mean, I'm pretty quiet. I don't want to leave it with the mind or with these thoughts or with the difficult conversations. I really want to say namaste, because this is a place of peace. And peace should never be, it should be always present and never sacrificed for anything. But I want to thank you all for sticking with me and not falling asleep. You certainly should do that, even if you're quiet. So thank you.
Yeah. And with that in mind, little meditation. So plant your feet on the floor. Breathe. Come into this present moment. Be here now. With every out breath, allow your body to relax, to let go, to allow what is to be. I want you to use your mind for a moment and think about a transitional conflict that you may be experiencing in your life right now. I know a lot of families are divided, undecided, unsure. Some, I know my own family, some have one view, some have, you could say, the opposite. I want to have you hold in mind someone who perhaps isn't thinking the way you think, isn't feeling the way you feel, and it's uncomfortable for you. And see if you can accept them just the way they are. Can you hold them in love? Even though you may be judging what they're saying you're doing, or they may be judging you. Can you allow them to be who they are? Just here, in this moment. If we are ever to get along, to find peace, don't you think we would need to learn to get along? Even if they can't find a space in their hearts to hold you, can you find a space in your heart to hold them? This, I believe, is where we need to move going forward. Into a place of acceptance, a place of allowing. We all have that power, the power to love. It comes from within, not without. And of course, to hold yourself in love. To accept yourself even when you're not being perfect, when you're making mistakes. Can you accept yourself in that place? Can you forgive yourself? Can you forgive the other? Just hold yourself in love. Allow others to be who they are. And know, regardless, love is always present. Spirit is with you. The divine supports you. You are all loved. And we are not separate. This is so important to remember. That you and that person that thinks differently from you, you are not separate. One might be an eagle, one might be a condor. Let's fly together along the same path towards peace. And so it is. Now we're going to have some more beautiful music. After that.
I've seen you struggle, and I've seen you stumble, get back up again. I've seen you worry, and I've seen the courage that shines in you, my friend. You inspire me to live courageously. How beautiful